In the vast tapestry of Westeros, where ice meets fire and prophecy intertwines with political intrigue, countless mysteries have captivated readers and viewers for decades. From the smoking ruins of old Valyria to the cryptic whispers beyond the wall, George R.R. Martin's world pulses with unanswered questions that spark endless debate among devoted fans. Tonight, we embark on a journey through the most compelling theories that have emerged from this rich universe. These are the mysteries that keep minds wandering long after the final page is turned. The speculations that reveal hidden depths beneath familiar tales. Let us explore the shadows where truth and legend converge. Beneath the churning waters of the smoking sea, shrouded in sulphurous mists and haunting silence, lies old Valyria, a civilization whose ashes whisper tales of vanished empire. The Doom, as historians call this cataclysmic event, marks one of the most profound mysteries in the known world, an apocalypse so complete that it transformed the mightiest empire in recorded history into a wasteland of glass and ash. For 4 centuries, the ruins have remained largely untouched, protected by demons and twisted creatures born from magical corruption, while scholars and adventurers debate the true nature of the catastrophe that befell the Dragon Lords. The Valyrian freehold had stood for over 4,000 years, a testament to human achievement built upon the backs of dragons and sustained by blood magic. From their volcanic peninsula, the Dragon Lords had conquered much of the known world, establishing trade routes that stretched from the Summer Isles to the far reaches of Essos. Their capital city rivaled any wonder of the ancient world, with towers of fused black stone that seemed to defy natural laws and pyramids that housed dragons in numbers that darkened the sky. The 14 Flames, massive volcanoes that ringed the Valyrian peninsula, provided both the foundation of their power and, many believe, the instrument of their destruction. The most widely accepted explanation for the doom centers on these volcanic forces. Maesters and scholars propose that a catastrophic chain of eruptions, perhaps triggered by the Dragon Lord's increasingly dangerous magical experiments, caused the peninsula to crack and sink beneath the waves. This natural disaster theory suggests that the Valyrians, in their hubris, may have delved too deeply into fire magic, destabilizing the very geological foundations upon which their empire rested. The evidence supports this interpretation. The 14 Flames had shown increasing activity in the years leading up to the Doom, and the resulting smoking sea bears all the characteristics of massive volcanic activity. Yet the supernatural explanations hold equal fascination for those who study the mysteries of the ancient world. Some propose that the Valyrians, drunk on their own power, and convinced of their superiority over both gods and nature, attempted to harness forces beyond their comprehension. Their blood magic rituals, which bound dragons to human will and extended life far beyond natural limits, may have ultimately attracted the attention of darker powers. The theory suggests that the Dragon Lord's experiments in controlling life and death finally provoked a cosmic retribution, a divine punishment that swept away their entire civilization in a single day. The aftermath of the Doom created ripple effects that continue to shape the world centuries later. The collapse of Valyrian power allowed other regions to assert independence, leading to the rise of the free cities and fundamentally altering the balance of power across Essos. The loss of Valyrian steel production techniques meant that these incredible weapons became priceless artifacts, symbols of ancient power that could never be replicated. Most significantly, the Doom scattered the surviving Dragon Lords across the known world, with House Targaryen representing the only family to successfully establish a new stronghold, eventually conquering the 7 kingdoms of Westeros. The ruins themselves present perhaps the most compelling evidence for supernatural involvement in Valyria's destruction. Travelers who venture into the smoking sea report encounters with creatures that defy natural explanation. Stone men whose touch turns living flesh to rock. Demons that seem part dragon and part nightmare. And worst of all, the whispers that drive men mad with visions of the Empire's former glory. These manifestations suggest that whatever destroyed Valyria left behind more than simple devastation. It created a wound in reality itself, a place where the natural order remains permanently broken. Ancient symbols scattered throughout the ruins offer tantalizing clues about the forces at work during Valyria's final days. The spiral motif, which appears carved into surviving structures, bears striking resemblance to symbols used by both the Children of the Forest and the others in distant Westeros. This connection has led some scholars to propose that the doom was not an isolated incident, but part of a larger pattern of magical catastrophe that has repeated throughout history. The spirals themselves may represent the cyclical nature of magical power, rising and falling in great waves that periodically reshape civilization. The Children of the Forest, those ancient inhabitants of Westeros who wielded magic through carved weirwood faces and lived in harmony with nature for thousands of years before the arrival of the first men, used spiral symbols in their sacred groves and carved them into cave walls throughout the continent. These symbols appear alongside their greatest magical workings: the creation of the others, the forging of the pact with the first men, and the shattering of the arm of Dorne. The spiral's 7 arms may represent the eternal cycle of seasons, the connection between all living things, or perhaps something more sinister. In stark contrast, the others employ a different symbol entirely: a circle bisected by a straight line, often created from the bodies of their victims or carved into ice and stone. This broken circle has sparked numerous interpretations among those who study the ancient mysteries. Some see it as a representation of division, the severing of the natural world from the realm of the dead. Others interpret it as a symbol of incompleteness, suggesting that the others view the world as fundamentally broken and seek to either repair it or destroy it entirely. The positioning of these symbols alongside each other in various ancient sites suggests a deeper relationship between the children and the others than most histories acknowledge. Both groups predate human civilization in Westeros. Both wield magic that fundamentally alters the natural world, and both seem to operate according to principles that transcend mortal understanding. The symbols may represent competing philosophies about the nature of existence, the children's spiral suggesting endless renewal and growth, while the other's broken circle implies finality and division. Archaeological evidence from the oldest ruins in Westeros reveals that these symbols often appear together, sometimes intertwined in complex patterns that suggest neither pure cooperation nor simple opposition. The placement hints at a more nuanced relationship, perhaps indicating periods of alliance followed by conflict, or different factions within each group holding varying philosophies about humanity's role in the world. The magic that flows through these ancient symbols appears to operate on principles entirely foreign to modern understanding. Unlike the more recent manifestations of power seen in Dragonfire or the resurrection abilities of Red Priests, the magic of the children and others seems to reshape reality at fundamental levels. The children could see through the eyes of animals, grow trees where none should survive, and call down floods that reshaped entire continents. The others demonstrate power over death itself, transforming living beings into creatures of ice and commanding them with perfect unity of purpose. This ancient magic appears to be tied directly to the symbols themselves, as if the carved spirals and broken circles serve as focal points that concentrate and direct supernatural forces. The symbols may function as more than mere representations. They could be actual tools of power, geometric forms that allow their creators to manipulate the fundamental forces that govern existence. The precise mathematical relationships within the spiral's 7 arms and the exact positioning of the other's bisecting line suggest an understanding of cosmic principles that modern civilization has entirely forgotten. The connection between these ancient symbols and the irregular seasons that plague Westeros has not escaped scholarly attention. The world's unpredictable climate, with summers and winters that can last for years or even decades, defies natural explanation and suggests magical interference in cosmic order. Some propose that the symbols represent different approaches to controlling seasonal change, the children seeking to maintain natural balance, while the others work to bring about eternal winter. The doom of Valyria may represent a catastrophic failure of similar symbolic magic. If the Dragon Lords had discovered their own version of symbol-based power, their experiments in binding dragons and extending life through blood sacrifice might have disrupted whatever cosmic balance these ancient markings were designed to maintain. The spiral and broken circle symbols found in Valyrian ruins, though worn by centuries of exposure to supernatural corruption, bear enough resemblance to their Westerosi counterparts to suggest a shared magical tradition that spans continents. As we delve deeper into these ancient mysteries, we begin to understand that the symbols may represent more than historical curiosities. They could be warnings left by civilizations that understood the true nature of the forces that shape the world, markers designed to help future generations recognize the signs of cosmic imbalance before it reaches catastrophic levels. The recurring appearance of these symbols throughout history, from the Wall to Valyria to the ruins of the Rhoynar, suggests that the lessons they contain remain as relevant today as they were thousands of years ago. The true significance of these ancient mysteries extends far beyond academic curiosity. Understanding the forces that destroyed Valyria and created the others may be crucial for preventing similar catastrophes in the future. The symbols serve as a bridge between the lost wisdom of the past and the challenges of the present, offering glimpses of powers and principles that could either save or doom the civilizations that follow. As the wheel of time continues to turn, these ancient markings remind us that some knowledge transcends the rise and fall of individual empires, waiting patiently for those wise enough to decipher their meaning. In the intricate web of Westerosi noble houses, where bloodlines determine everything from inheritance rights to the very throne itself, few secrets carry more weight than questions of true parentage. Behind gilded family crests and ancient lineages lie whispered rumors and carefully hidden truths that could reshape the balance of power across the Seven Kingdoms. These mysteries of blood and birth have spawned countless theories, each seeking to unravel connections that their subjects themselves may never fully understand. The most enduring mystery centers on Jon Snow, the bastard son whose very existence challenged everything the Honorable Eddard Stark claimed to represent. From his earliest appearance at Winterfell, Jon carried an aura of shame that seemed inconsistent with his father's character, a man renowned for his unwavering honesty and moral principles. Ned's conversations with his supposed bastard contained cryptic references to promises made to his beloved sister Lyanna, hints that suggested a far more complex truth than simple infidelity. The evidence for Jon's true parentage had been carefully woven throughout the histories long before revelation confirmed what many suspected. Ned's dreams frequently featured his sister surrounded by blue roses, the same flowers that Prince Rhaegar Targaryen had given at the tournament at Harrenhal, where their fateful meeting occurred. The timing of Lyanna's death in the Tower of Joy, shortly after the fall of King's Landing, coincided precisely with what would have been Jon's birth. Most tellingly, Ned's internal struggles whenever he spoke of Jon's mother revealed a man tormented by deception rather than past indiscretion. The revelation of Jon's Targaryen heritage through his parents Rhaegar and Lyanna carries implications far beyond simple legitimacy. His bloodline represents the convergence of ice and fire, the union of two houses whose ancestries stretch back to the most pivotal moments in Westerosi history. The Starks, descended from the first men who fought alongside the children of the forest and built the wall, carry ancient magic in their blood that manifests through warging abilities and prophetic dreams. The Targaryens, survivors of old Valyria's destruction, possess the dragon blood that allowed them to ride and command the great beasts that conquered kingdoms. This duality in Jon's heritage positions him uniquely within the prophecies that speak of a champion who will stand against the darkness. The prince that was promised, born amidst smoke and salt, represents hope for salvation when the long night returns. Jon's resurrection from death fulfills the rebirth aspect of the prophecy, while his mixed parentage embodies the balance between opposing forces that may be necessary to restore cosmic order. His ability to unite wildlings and Night's Watch members, traditional enemies separated by the wall, demonstrates the unifying power that his bloodline inheritance provides. Yet, Jon Snow's parentage represents only one thread in a tapestry of hidden family connections that could reshape our understanding of major houses throughout Westeros. Perhaps no theory carries more potential for political upheaval than the speculation surrounding Tyrion Lannister's true father. The dwarf son of Tywin Lannister has long been viewed as an aberration within his family line. His physical differences and intellectual capabilities setting him apart from his golden-haired siblings in ways that extend far beyond mere genetics. The relationship between Mad King Aerys Targaryen and Joanna Lannister provides the foundation for this controversial theory. Historical records document Aerys's obsession with Tywin's beautiful wife, his inappropriate behavior toward her at court functions, and his increasingly erratic demands for her presence at royal events. The timing of Tyrion's birth, occurring during a period when Aerys's madness was reaching new heights and his relationship with Tywin was deteriorating rapidly, adds credence to whispers of royal interference in the Lannister family line. Tywin's profound hatred for his youngest son extends far beyond normal disappointment over physical disabilities or personality differences. His treatment of Tyrion suggests a deeper revulsion, a disgust that seems rooted in something more personal than mere embarrassment. The former hand of the king's resignation from his position shortly after Joanna's death and his subsequent bitter resentment toward the Targaryen dynasty hint at knowledge of a violation that he could neither prevent nor openly address without destroying his own family's reputation. The physical evidence supporting Tyrion's Targaryen parentage includes subtle details that have been carefully noted by those who study bloodline mysteries. In the books, Tyrion possesses mismatched eyes, one green and one described as so dark it appears almost black, though some observe purple highlights under certain lighting conditions. This eye coloration, combined with his pale blonde hair that differs markedly from the golden locks of his siblings, suggests genetic inheritance from sources outside the traditional Lannister line. More compelling than physical characteristics, however, is Tyrion's unprecedented affinity for dragons. Where most people inspire immediate hostility from these legendary creatures, Tyrion demonstrates an almost supernatural ability to approach and interact with them safely. During his encounters with Daenerys's dragons, particularly Viserion and Rhaegal, he displays none of the fear that typically marks non-Targaryen interactions with these beasts. The dragons themselves seem to recognize something familiar in him, responding to his presence with curiosity rather than aggression. The implications of Tyrion's potential Targaryen heritage extend beyond personal identity to encompass the very prophecies that speak of 3 dragon riders and the return of the dragon's power to the world. If Tyrion carries the blood of old Valyria, he could represent the 3rd head of the dragon that ancient prophecies describe as necessary for the defeat of darkness. His intellectual capabilities, political acumen, and understanding of both Western and Eastern cultures would make him an ideal candidate for uniting the forces necessary to face the others when the long night returns. The prophecy of Azor Ahai, the prince that was promised who will be born again amidst smoke and salt to fight the darkness, has generated more debate and speculation than perhaps any other element of Westerosi mythology. This ancient legend, preserved in various forms across different cultures and religions, describes a hero who will forge the legendary sword Lightbringer through 3 attempts, each requiring a sacrifice of increasing personal cost. The traditional interpretation focuses on Jon Snow as the most likely candidate, given his resurrection from death, his mixed heritage of ice and fire, and his position at the center of the conflict with the others. His rebirth from the flames of his funeral pyre could fulfill the smoke requirement, while the tears shed by those who mourned him might represent the salt. His battles against the dead and his ability to unite traditional enemies in common cause align perfectly with the hero's prophesied role. However, alternative interpretations of the Azor Ahai prophecy suggest different candidates whose stories mirror the legend in unexpected ways. Daenerys Targaryen's emergence from Khal Drogo's funeral pyre with 3 newborn dragons represents perhaps the most literal fulfillment of being born amidst smoke and salt. Her tears for her lost husband and child provided the salt, while the flames that should have killed her instead transformed her into the mother of dragons. The dragons themselves could represent Lightbringer reborn, weapons of fire that burn away the darkness and restore balance to the world. The 3 forgings of Lightbringer described in the prophecy take on new meaning when viewed through the lens of different candidates' journeys. The first forging, where the blade breaks when tempered in water, could represent failed attempts at heroism or leadership that collapse under pressure. The second forging, where the sword shatters when driven through a lion's heart, might symbolize the necessity of overcoming pride, courage, or strength through sacrifice. The final forging, achieved only when the blade pierces the heart of a beloved, suggests that true power requires the ultimate sacrifice of what one holds most dear. Jaime Lannister's arc contains elements that align surprisingly well with this prophetic framework. His confession about killing the Mad King, revealed while bathing with Brienne at Harrenhal, could represent the first tempering, as his carefully constructed identity dissolved in honest revelation. His role in Tyrion's escape from King's Landing, which led directly to their father's death, fulfilled the lion's heart requirement, as Jaime sacrificed his relationship with his family for moral principle. The theory suggests that his ultimate redemption would require him to kill Cersei, his twin sister and lover, completing the prophecy by destroying the person he treasures most. The significance of hidden bloodlines extends beyond individual character arcs to encompass the broader theme of identity versus destiny that runs throughout the chronicles of Ice and Fire. Characters struggle constantly with the tension between who they believe themselves to be and who their heritage suggests they must become. Jon Snow's journey from bastard to prince reflects this universal struggle, while Tyrion's potential Targaryen blood would add another layer to his already complex relationship with power and family loyalty. The Targaryen bloodline itself carries unique properties that extend far beyond simple nobility or political legitimacy. The blood of old Valyria flows with magic that allows its bearers to bond with dragons, resist fire to varying degrees, and experience prophetic dreams with unusual clarity and frequency. This magical inheritance comes with costs as well as benefits. As the madness that plagued Aerys Targaryen and other members of his family demonstrates the dangerous edge of draconic heritage, the three-headed dragon prophecy, which speaks of three riders who will restore the Targaryen dynasty to its former glory, requires careful consideration of who among the living carries sufficient dragon blood to fulfill this ancient prediction. Daenerys represents the obvious choice as the last known Targaryen of pure blood, while Jon Snow's revelation as Rhaegar's son provides the second head. The identity of the third dragon rider remains hotly debated, with theories ranging from Tyrion's potential Targaryen heritage to the possibility of other hidden bloodlines yet to be revealed. The political implications of these bloodline revelations extend throughout the realm, potentially invalidating claims to thrones, lands, and titles that have stood for generations. Jon Snow's true parentage, if publicly acknowledged, would place him ahead of Daenerys in the Targaryen succession, fundamentally altering the dynamics of any restoration attempt. Tyrion's potential royal blood could complicate his relationship with both the Lannister and Targaryen houses, positioning him as either a bridge between former enemies or a target for elimination by those who fear his claim. The burden of hidden heritage weighs heavily on those who carry it, creating internal conflicts between personal desires and prophetic destiny. The characters struggle with questions of choice versus fate, wondering whether their actions stem from free will or merely fulfill predetermined roles written in their blood. These bloodline mysteries force us to confront uncomfortable questions about the nature of identity and whether we can ever truly escape the legacy of our ancestors. The revelation of true parentage often comes at moments of greatest crisis, when characters must choose between competing loyalties and conflicting values. The timing of these discoveries suggests that heritage reveals itself not randomly, but precisely when its knowledge becomes most crucial for the fate of kingdoms. This pattern implies that bloodline mysteries serve a greater purpose than simple family drama, functioning as keys that unlock understanding at pivotal moments in history. As we contemplate these tangled webs of heritage and identity, we begin to understand that the true power of bloodlines lies not in the privileges they confer, but in the responsibilities they impose. The dragon blood that flows through Targaryen veins brings with it the obligation to restore balance to a world disrupted by ancient catastrophes. The Stark blood that carries the magic of the First Men demands protection of the realm against supernatural threats that others cannot even perceive. The hidden parentages that bind characters to multiple houses force them to transcend traditional loyalties and forge new alliances based on shared destiny rather than inherited enmity. These mysteries of blood and birth remind us that in a world where magic flows through family lines and prophecies shape the fate of nations, the question of who we truly are extends far beyond simple genetics. The revelation of hidden heritage transforms not just individual identity, but the very fabric of political and magical reality, proving that some secrets carry the power to reshape the world when their time for revelation finally arrives. From the frozen wastes beyond the wall, where the howling wind carries whispers of an ancient hatred, emerges one of the most terrifying mysteries in all of Westeros: the true nature and purpose of the others. These beings of ice and darkness have haunted the nightmares of the living for thousands of years, their very existence challenging everything mortals believe they understand about life, death, and the natural order. The legends speak of creatures so alien to human comprehension that their motivations remain as opaque as the endless winter they herald. Yet their impact on the world proves undeniable. The origins of the others stretch back to the dawn of recorded history, when the world was younger and magic flowed more freely through the veins of reality itself. The most widely accepted account, preserved in the ancient records of the Children of the Forest, tells of a desperate act committed in the face of human expansion across the continent. As the first men swept across Westeros with bronze weapons and iron resolve, burning the sacred weirwood groves and slaughtering the children in their war of conquest, the surviving members of that ancient race made a choice that would echo through millennia. In a grove of weirwood trees whose faces wept red sap like tears of blood, the children performed their most terrible magic. They took a captured warrior of the first men, bound him to the pale trunk of a heart tree, and drove a shard of dragon glass deep into his chest. The transformation that followed defied all natural law as life drained from the man's body, replaced by something far more sinister. His eyes turned the color of winter ice, his skin grew pale as fresh snow, and his very presence began to radiate the killing cold that would become the other's signature. This origin story, while compelling in its tragic necessity, raises profound questions about the true nature of the beings that were created. If the others began as corrupted humans, twisted by children's magic into weapons of war against their own species, what does this transformation say about the essence of humanity itself? The process appears irreversible, stripping away not just life but every trace of warmth, emotion, and individual will that defines human existence. What emerges seems less like a corrupted person and more like a fundamental force of nature given sentient form. Yet alternative theories propose even more disturbing possibilities for the other's origins. Some scholars suggest that these beings predate both humanity and the Children of the Forest, representing an elemental force that has existed since the world's creation. In this interpretation, the others embody winter itself, the necessary balance to summer's warmth and life's abundance. They are not corrupted beings seeking revenge, but cosmic entities fulfilling their eternal role in maintaining the natural order through cycles of death and rebirth. The elemental theory gains credence from observations of the other's behavior and capabilities. Unlike corrupted humans who might retain traces of their former selves, these beings demonstrate perfect unity of purpose and action. They move with the coordination of a single organism, suggesting a hive mind or collective consciousness that transcends individual identity. Their ability to resurrect and control the dead operates on a scale that surpasses any magic wielded by human practitioners, implying access to fundamental forces that govern existence itself. Physical evidence supporting the elemental interpretation includes the other's apparent inability to cross running water, their vulnerability to fire, and certain metals like dragon glass and Valyrian steel, and their dependence on extreme cold for their very existence. These limitations suggest beings bound by natural laws rather than corrupted mortals who might retain human adaptability. They cannot simply choose to overcome their weaknesses through will or learning, indicating that their nature is fixed and immutable as any force of nature. The relationship between the others and their undead servants reveals another layer of complexity in understanding their true nature. The wights they create from fallen humans and animals retain no trace of their former personalities or loyalties, serving instead as perfect extensions of their creator's will. This transformation differs fundamentally from other forms of resurrection seen in Westeros, which typically preserve some essence of the original person. The other's magic appears to consume identity entirely, replacing individual consciousness with absolute obedience. The tactical intelligence displayed by the others in their movements and attacks suggests that whatever they have become, they retain sophisticated reasoning abilities. They demonstrate patience in building their forces, strategic thinking in choosing targets, and adaptive responses to new threats. Their assault on Hardhome revealed coordinated planning that extended beyond simple instinctual behavior, while their manipulation of weather patterns shows understanding of cause and effect relationships that span vast geographical areas. The symbolism surrounding the others provides crucial clues about their true motivations and ultimate goals. Their practice of arranging bodies in geometric patterns, particularly the broken circle with a line through its center, suggests a desire to communicate meaning rather than simply spread terror. These symbols appear consistently across their territories, carved into ice and formed from the bodies of their victims, indicating that the message they convey holds significance to the others themselves. The broken circle symbol has spawned numerous interpretations among those who study the others' activities. Some view it as a representation of division, the severing of natural bonds that connect all living things. Others interpret it as a symbol of incompleteness, suggesting that the others perceive the world as fundamentally flawed and seek either to repair it through their intervention or to complete its destruction. The bisecting line might represent the barrier between life and death, which the others have learned to cross and control. Alternative readings of the symbol suggest it could represent the others' view of time itself, with the circle indicating the cyclical nature of seasons, and the line marking their role in bringing about the necessary transition from summer to winter. In this interpretation, the others do not see themselves as destroyers, but as agents of cosmic balance, returning to fulfill their ancient function when the world grows too warm, too populated, or too far removed from the natural order they represent. The timing of the others' return raises questions about what triggered their emergence from centuries of dormancy. Their reappearance coincides with several significant events: the return of magic to the world, the birth of dragons after their long absence, and the growing instability of political and social structures throughout Westeros. This synchronicity suggests that the others respond to specific conditions rather than operating on a predetermined schedule. The presence of dragons in the world for the first time in over a century may have awakened ancient instincts or obligations within the others. If these beings truly represent elemental forces, the return of fire magic through Daenerys's dragons might have triggered a corresponding response from the forces of ice and death. The cosmic balance that governs the world may require the others to act whenever magical power reaches certain thresholds, ensuring that no single element dominates existence for extended periods. The political chaos engulfing Westeros during the War of the Five Kings could also serve as a catalyst for the others' return. If these beings view themselves as agents of natural order, the breakdown of stable governance and the resulting suffering of countless innocents might compel them to intervene. Their perspective on human civilization may be fundamentally different from our own, seeing cities and kingdoms as unnatural aberrations that must be periodically cleansed to restore proper balance. The others' relationship with the Night's Watch reveals another dimension of their complex nature. For thousands of years, these sworn brothers have stood guard against the threat from beyond the wall. Yet their understanding of what they face remains fragmentary and largely theoretical. The Watch's rituals and traditions preserve echoes of ancient knowledge about the others, including the importance of fire, the effectiveness of obsidian weapons, and the necessity of burning the dead to prevent resurrection. The Lord Commander's ancient horn, said to have the power to bring down the wall itself, represents a fascinating element in the relationship between the others and the barriers that contain them. If such an artifact truly exists and possesses the power attributed to it, the question arises: who created it, and for what purpose? The horn could represent a fail-safe mechanism designed to allow the others' passage south when certain conditions are met, suggesting that the wall was never intended as a permanent prison, but rather as a temporary measure. The magical properties of the wall itself demonstrate sophisticated understanding of the forces needed to contain or repel the others. The structure incorporates not just ice and stone, but spells and wards woven by the children of the forest and reinforced by generations of Night's Watch members. The barrier's effectiveness suggests that its builders possessed detailed knowledge of the other's capabilities and limitations, implying previous contact and conflict that provided crucial intelligence. The prophecies surrounding the long night and the return of darkness speak of a conflict that transcends simple warfare between human and other forces. These ancient predictions describe a struggle for the very soul of the world, with the outcome determining whether life and warmth will continue to exist or if eternal winter will claim dominion over all creation. The cyclical nature of these prophecies suggests that this battle has occurred before and will occur again, part of an endless struggle between opposing cosmic forces. The role of the Night King, as described in legends of the Night's Watch, adds another layer of complexity to understanding the other's nature and organization. Historical accounts speak of a Lord Commander who fell in love with a female other, taking her as his queen and ruling the Night's Watch for 13 years before being overthrown by a combined force of wildlings and Starks. This tale, while possibly corrupted by centuries of retelling, suggests that individual others can form relationships and that their society includes hierarchical structures similar to human organizations. The possibility that the Night King represents a recurring figure rather than a single individual opens disturbing questions about the other's long-term strategy and goals. If their leadership can be transferred or reborn across centuries, their plans might span timeframes that dwarf human comprehension. What seems like random aggression to mortals could represent carefully orchestrated campaigns designed to achieve objectives that require generations or even millennia to accomplish. The other's treatment of human children provides perhaps the most chilling insight into their true nature and intentions. Accounts from wildling survivors describe infants being taken alive rather than killed, carried away to unknown fates beyond the reach of rescue. Some theories suggest these children are transformed into others themselves, expanding their numbers through corruption rather than natural reproduction. Other interpretations propose that the children serve different purposes, perhaps as offerings to whatever dark powers the others serve, or as raw material for magical workings beyond human understanding. The question of whether the others can create more of their kind through transformation, or whether their numbers remain fixed, since their original creation carries enormous implications for the nature of the threat they represent. If they can increase their ranks indefinitely through corruption of the living, their patient accumulation of power becomes even more terrifying. If their numbers are limited to those created in the ancient past, their careful preservation of existing members and strategic use of white servants makes perfect tactical sense. The other's apparent immunity to conventional weapons except for fire, dragon glass, and Valyrian steel suggests that their physical forms operate according to different principles than normal matter. These specific vulnerabilities point to deeper connections between the others and the magical forces that shaped the ancient world. Dragon glass, formed in the fires of volcanic eruptions, carries the essence of Earth's molten core. Valyrian steel, forged with dragon fire and blood magic, represents the pinnacle of magical metallurgy. Both substances channel forces antithetical to the other's icy nature. The connection between the others and the irregular seasons that plague Westeros remains one of the most debated aspects of their existence. The correlation between their activity and the onset of winter could indicate causation in either direction. They might bring winter with them, or winter's arrival might enable their emergence from whatever realm they inhabit during warmer periods. The unprecedented length of the most recent summer, lasting nearly a decade, suggests that something has been building toward the other's return for years. The cosmic implications of the other's existence force us to confront uncomfortable questions about the nature of good and evil in a world where magic operates according to its own mysterious laws. If these beings truly represent necessary agents of natural balance, their actions cannot be judged by human moral standards. They become less like villains and more like forces of nature, as morally neutral as earthquakes or floods despite the devastation they cause to human civilization. Yet the other's apparent capacity for strategic thinking and symbolic communication suggests that they possess something resembling consciousness, making them more than simple natural phenomena. This consciousness, however alien it might be to human understanding, implies some form of moral agency that allows for judgment of their choices and actions. The question becomes whether their perspective on existence is so fundamentally different from ours that communication or negotiation remains impossible, or whether common ground might exist between species sharing the same world. The ultimate resolution of the other's threat may depend less on military victory than on understanding the cosmic role they play in maintaining universal balance. If their return signals not conquest but correction, the living might need to address whatever imbalance triggered their emergence rather than simply fighting to destroy them. This possibility suggests that the others serve as a kind of immune system for the world itself, activated when magical or natural systems drift too far from their intended parameters. As we contemplate these beings of ice and darkness, we must remember that they represent more than simple antagonists in humanity's story. The others embody questions about the price of civilization, the relationship between progress and natural order, and the possibility that forces beyond our understanding might judge our actions according to standards we cannot comprehend. Their existence challenges us to consider whether the warmth and light we cherish might sometimes burn too brightly, requiring the cooling touch of winter to restore balance to an overheated world. In the Seven Kingdoms and beyond, where ancient faiths compete with newer beliefs for the souls of mortals, the question of divine power remains as contested as any battlefield. From the fiery proclamations of the Lord of Light to the whispered prayers beneath heart trees, from the many-faced god of Braavos to the drowned god of the Iron Islands, the faithful claim evidence of miraculous intervention, while skeptics seek natural explanations for seemingly supernatural events. The truth about the gods and their influence over mortal affairs may prove more complex than either believers or doubters imagine. The Lord of Light commands perhaps the most visible demonstrations of divine power in the known world, with his servants performing feats that challenge rational explanation. The Red Priests and Priestesses who serve R'hllor demonstrate abilities that extend far beyond mere sleight of hand or psychological manipulation. Thoros of Myr, a drunk and dissolute priest who lost faith in his own teachings, somehow managed to resurrect Beric Dondarrion 6 times through desperate prayers to his god. The transformation of Beric, through each resurrection, his gradual loss of memories and human warmth, suggests that these miracles come at profound costs that may reflect the true nature of divine intervention. Melisandre of Ashai, the Red Woman whose prophecies guided Stannis Baratheon's campaign for the Iron Throne, presents perhaps the most compelling evidence for genuine magical power operating through religious faith. Her ability to birth shadow assassins from her own body defies every natural law, creating beings of pure darkness that can penetrate any defense to strike down their targets. The process requires not just faith but literal life force, drawn from believers whose essence fuels these supernatural manifestations. The resurrection of Jon Snow at Castle Black provides another demonstration of red magic that cannot be easily dismissed as trickery or coincidence. Melisandre's ritual, performed over his corpse after days of death, brought back not just life but memories and personality largely intact. Unlike Beric's diminishing returns through multiple resurrections, Jon's restoration seemed complete, suggesting that different factors may influence the effectiveness of this divine intervention. Yet the Red Priests themselves acknowledge the limitations and uncertainties inherent in their power. Melisandre admits to seeing only pieces of the truth in her flames, fragments of possible futures that may or may not come to pass. Her misinterpretation of visions, particularly regarding Stannis as Azor Ahai Reborn, demonstrates that even genuine magical ability can be clouded by personal desires and flawed understanding. The flames show truth, but the meaning of that truth often remains opaque to those who seek guidance. The competing interpretation suggests that red magic operates through psychological and natural forces rather than divine intervention. Practitioners like Melisandre may possess genuine psychic abilities, sensitivity to patterns and probabilities that allow them to make accurate predictions without supernatural assistance. Their resurrection rituals might work through unknown medical techniques, perhaps involving herbal compounds or energy manipulation that appears magical to those who lack understanding of the underlying principles. In stark contrast to the dramatic manifestations of the Lord of Light, the old gods of the north work through subtlety and connection rather than spectacular display. The weirwood trees, with their carved faces, serve as conduits for a form of consciousness that transcends individual identity, allowing the faithful to access memories and perspectives that span thousands of years. The three-eyed ravens, both the ancient being beyond the wall and those who inherit his abilities, demonstrate powers that operate through knowledge rather than force. Brandon Stark's development of green seer abilities reveals the true nature of old gods' magic as something fundamentally different from the power wielded by red priests or shadowbinders. His capacity to witness events across time and space, to influence past occurrences through whispered words, and to inhabit the minds of animals suggests access to a cosmic network of consciousness that underlies reality itself. The old gods may not be gods in the traditional sense, but rather a collective awareness that emerges from the connection between all living things. The weirwood trees themselves present compelling evidence for this interpretation of divine power. These pale giants, with their blood-red leaves and carved faces, serve as more than symbols or gathering places for worship. They function as living repositories of memory, storing within their wood and sap the experiences of countless generations. The faces carved into their trunks may not represent artistic interpretation, but actual preservation of individual consciousness, allowing the dead to continue existing within the trees themselves. The children of the forest's relationship with the old gods suggests that this form of divine power requires active cultivation and maintenance rather than existing independently. The children carved the faces, performed the rituals, and taught humans to access the network of consciousness that flows through the weirwood groves. Without their guidance, this magic might have remained forever beyond mortal reach, implying that the gods themselves depend on mortal agents for their influence over the world. The many-faced god of Braavos presents perhaps the most philosophically complex approach to divine power in the known world. The faceless men who serve this deity view death not as an ending but as a gift, a release from the suffering and limitations of mortal existence. Their god incorporates all other religions, suggesting that death represents the ultimate truth that underlies every faith and philosophy. The origins of the faceless men in the slave mines of Valyria provide crucial context for understanding their religious philosophy. These servants of death emerged from circumstances where existence had become so unbearable that ending life represented the greatest mercy possible. Their founder, a slave who first gave the gift of death to his fellow sufferers, established a tradition that views assassination not as murder but as sacrament, a holy act that serves the will of the ultimate God. The pricing structure employed by the faceless men for their services reveals the true nature of their religious commitment. They do not seek gold or political advantage, but rather demand sacrifices that reflect the spiritual cost of taking life. The price increases based on the connection between the client and the target, requiring the greatest payment when someone seeks to kill those closest to them. This system suggests that the many-faced god values the emotional and spiritual toll of death over simple material compensation. The ability of faceless men to change their physical appearance through wearing the faces of the dead demonstrates magic that operates on principles entirely different from other supernatural arts. This transformation goes beyond illusion or disguise to actual alteration of physical structure, allowing perfect impersonation that fools even intimate family members. The process requires the complete suppression of individual identity, suggesting that the magic works by temporarily erasing the practitioner's sense of self and replacing it with the consciousness preserved in the stolen face. The theological implications of face-changing magic challenge conventional understanding of identity and consciousness. If the faceless men can truly become other people, wearing not just their appearance, but their memories and mannerisms, the boundaries between individual existence become frighteningly fluid. The many-faced god may represent not just death, but the ultimate dissolution of identity itself, the force that breaks down the barriers between separate consciousness and returns all beings to undifferentiated unity. The drowned god of the Iron Islands presents yet another interpretation of divine power, one that embraces death and rebirth through literal drowning and resurrection. The Ironborn believe that those who die in the sea and return to life emerge stronger and more blessed than before. Their religious practices involve deliberate drowning followed by attempts at resuscitation, creating a form of controlled death experience that may genuinely alter consciousness. The effectiveness of drowned god rituals in producing religious visions and altered states of consciousness suggests that near-death experiences can indeed provide access to forms of awareness unavailable to ordinary consciousness. The oxygen deprivation and trauma of drowning may trigger neurological states that the Ironborn interpret as divine communication. Whether these experiences reflect genuine contact with supernatural forces or represent natural psychological phenomena remains a matter of interpretation. The priests of the drowned god demonstrate healing abilities and resistance to injury that parallels the powers claimed by servants of other deities. Aeron Greyjoy's survival of experiences that should have killed him multiple times could indicate divine protection or simply exceptional physical resilience combined with favorable circumstances. The ambiguity inherent in these manifestations reflects the broader uncertainty surrounding all claims of divine intervention in the mortal world. The faith of the Seven, while lacking the dramatic supernatural displays associated with other religions, wields enormous influence through institutional power and social control. The High Sparrows movement demonstrates how religious conviction can reshape political reality even without obvious magical intervention. The faith militant's ability to challenge even royal authority suggests that belief itself represents a form of power that can rival dragons or armies in its capacity to change the world. The theological complexity of the Seven suggests a more sophisticated approach to divine power than the simple polytheism it might initially appear to represent. The seven aspects of a single deity may reflect an understanding that divine power manifests differently according to human needs and circumstances. The warrior guides soldiers in battle. The mother protects children and families. The stranger presides over death and transformation, each aspect addressing different elements of mortal existence while remaining part of a unified whole. The historical development of the faith of the Seven in Westeros reveals how religious beliefs adapt to local conditions while maintaining core theological principles. The faith arrived with the Andal invasion, gradually displacing the old gods throughout most of the continent, while incorporating elements of local tradition where necessary for acceptance. This evolution demonstrates how divine power, whether real or imagined, must work through human institutions and cultural frameworks to influence mortal affairs. The competition between different faiths for dominance in Westeros reflects deeper questions about the nature of truth and the relationship between belief and reality. If multiple gods demonstrate genuine power through their servants, the theological implications become staggering. Either divine power is accessible through various pathways, each equally valid in its own context, or the gods themselves represent different aspects of underlying forces that mortals struggle to comprehend. The magical renaissance that coincides with the return of dragons to the world affects all religious traditions, strengthening the abilities of priests and priestesses across different faiths. This synchronicity suggests that divine power may be tied to broader magical currents that ebb and flow according to cosmic cycles. The gods may not create magic, but rather channel and direct forces that exist independently of their influence. As we examine the intricate relationships between gods, magic, and faith in this complex world, we begin to understand that the question of divine existence may be less important than the undeniable reality of divine influence. Whether the gods represent conscious entities, natural forces, or psychological phenomena, their impact on mortal affairs remains profound and measurable. The power of belief to reshape reality, whether through genuine supernatural intervention or through the collective will of the faithful, demonstrates that the divine operates in the world, regardless of its ultimate nature or origin. Throughout the chronicles of Ice and Fire, prophecies weave their way through the fabric of destiny, like golden threads in a tapestry, binding past to future and mortal choice to cosmic inevitability. These ancient utterances, spoken by Wood's witches, preserved in religious texts, and whispered through dreams, carry weight that extends far beyond simple prediction. They shape the decisions of kings and commoners alike, driving characters toward fates they seek either to embrace or escape, often achieving both simultaneously through the cruel irony that attends most prophetic fulfillment. The prophecy of the Valonqar stands among the most personally devastating predictions ever spoken in Westeros. A curse disguised as revelation that has haunted Cersei Lannister since childhood. During her youth at Casterly Rock, the ambitious young daughter of Tywin Lannister sought out Maggie the Frog, a woods witch whose reputation for prophecy had spread throughout the Westerlands. What Cersei received that day was not the reassurance of future glory she expected, but a series of predictions that would torment her for the remainder of her life. Maggie's prophecy spoke of 3 children rather than the many offspring Cersei had envisioned, each destined to wear golden crowns before meeting violent ends. The witch foretold that a younger and more beautiful queen would cast Cersei down and take everything she held dear, while her own death would come at the hands of the Valonqar, the little brother whose hands would wrap around her pale white throat. These predictions established the framework for decades of paranoia, manipulation, and increasingly desperate attempts to control fate through force of will. The question of the Valonqar's identity has generated extensive speculation, with evidence supporting multiple candidates whose relationships to Cersei could fulfill the prophecy's requirements. Tyrion Lannister presents the most obvious interpretation. The younger brother whom Cersei has despised since birth and blamed for their mother's death. His intellectual superiority, his ability to see through her manipulations, and his eventual testimony against her during his trial for regicide all position him as a natural candidate for bringing about her downfall. Yet the prophecy's wording in High Valyrian introduces crucial ambiguity that complicates simple interpretation. The term Valonqar translates most directly as little brother, but High Valyrian does not distinguish gender in the same way as the common tongue. The prophecy could equally refer to a little sister, expanding the pool of potential candidates to include figures like Arya Stark, whose list of targets has long included Cersei's name, or even Daenerys Targaryen, who could be considered a younger sister in the broader Targaryen family structure. The most intriguing possibility, however, centers on Jaime Lannister himself, the twin brother who emerged from their mother's womb mere moments after Cersei. Though their birth order has never been considered significant, the technical fact of Jaime's status as the younger sibling opens disturbing possibilities for the prophecy's fulfillment. His growing disillusionment with Cersei's cruelty and madness creates potential for the kind of profound betrayal that would fit the prophecy's dramatic requirements. Jaime's character arc throughout the Chronicles presents a gradual awakening to the moral compromises he has made in service to his sister's ambitions. His encounter with Brienne of Tarth, his loss of his sword hand, and his witnessing of Cersei's increasingly erratic behavior all contribute to a transformation that could culminate in the ultimate repudiation of their shared history. The man who once pushed a child from a tower to protect their secret might finally find the courage to end the source of his moral corruption. The timing of prophetic fulfillment often reveals patterns that suggest deeper forces at work than simple coincidence or self-fulfilling behavior. Maggie's predictions about Cersei's children proved accurate, not just in their deaths, but in the specific sequence and circumstances surrounding each tragedy. Joffrey's death through poison at his own wedding feast, Myrcella's murder during a moment of political vulnerability, and Tommen's suicide following the destruction of the Sept of Baelor all occurred in ways that maximized Cersei's suffering while advancing the broader narrative toward its inevitable conclusion. The prophecy of Azor Ahai presents a more complex challenge to interpretation, as its ancient origins have allowed for numerous variations and translations across different cultures and time periods. The basic elements remain consistent across versions. A hero will be born again amidst smoke and salt, will wake dragons from stone, will forge the sword, Lightbringer through 3 attempts requiring sacrificial love, and will lead the fight against darkness when the long night returns. Multiple candidates demonstrate elements that align with this prophecy, creating the possibility that it may refer not to a single individual, but to archetypal qualities that could manifest through various heroes depending on circumstances. Jon Snow's resurrection, amid the smoke of funeral pyres and the tears of mourning friends, provides one interpretation. while his Targaryen heritage connects him to the dragon-waking element of the prediction. His willingness to sacrifice personal happiness and safety for the greater good aligns with the selfless love required to forge Lightbringer. Daenerys Targaryen's emergence from fire with living dragons represents perhaps the most literal fulfillment of several prophetic elements. Her rebirth in Drogo's funeral pyre occurred amidst both literal smoke and the salt of her tears for her lost husband and child. The 3 dragons that hatched from stone eggs could themselves represent Lightbringer, weapons of fire that burn away darkness and restore light to the world. Her campaigns across Slaver's Bay demonstrate the kind of liberation from suffering that Azor Ahai's coming is meant to herald. The 3-headed dragon prophecy, preserved in Targaryen family traditions, speaks of 3 riders who will restore the dragon's power to the world and unite fire and blood in a final triumph over their enemies. This prediction has shaped Targaryen ambitions for generations, driving their attempts to maintain pure bloodlines and their belief in their divine right to rule over lesser mortals. The specific mention of 3 heads suggests that dragon power requires multiple wielders working in harmony rather than a single dominant rider. The challenge of identifying the 3 dragon riders has generated theories that connect to broader questions about hidden parentage and the distribution of Targaryen blood throughout noble houses. If Jon Snow and potentially Tyrion Lannister carry dragon blood through secret parentage, the 3 heads could already exist without public recognition of their true heritage. This possibility would explain the dragon's acceptance of multiple riders and the convergence of these specific individuals at crucial moments in history. Prophetic dreams represent another category of supernatural revelation that affects characters throughout the chronicles, providing glimpses of future events that may or may not come to pass depending on the choices made by those who receive them. These dreams differ from the constructed prophecies of witches and priests in their spontaneous nature and their tendency to focus on personally significant events rather than grand historical movements. Bran Stark's green seer abilities provide the most developed example of prophetic dreaming, demonstrating how visions of the future connect to broader magical forces that transcend normal temporal limitations. His dreams often focus on family members and their fates, suggesting that prophetic ability may be strongest when directed toward those with whom the dreamer shares deep emotional connections. The accuracy of these visions varies, with some proving precisely correct, while others show possibilities that never manifest. The 3-eyed raven's guidance reveals that prophetic ability requires careful interpretation and understanding of the symbolic language through which visions communicate meaning. Events seen in dreams often represent metaphorical truth rather than literal prediction, requiring wisdom and experience to decode their actual significance. The tendency of characters to misinterpret their visions, seeing only what they wish to see or fear most deeply, demonstrates the dangerous ambiguity inherent in prophetic revelation. Daenerys Targaryen's visions in the House of the Undying present perhaps the most complex prophetic experience recorded in recent history, combining personal destiny with broader historical movements in a series of interconnected scenes. Her glimpse of the Iron Throne covered in snow could represent either literal winter or metaphorical desolation, while her vision of a blue flower growing from a wall of ice suggests connections between seemingly unrelated bloodlines and locations. The reliability of prophetic visions appears to depend partly on the spiritual and mental state of the recipient, with those who maintain clear moral purpose receiving more accurate guidance than those driven by selfish ambition or clouded by emotional turmoil. This pattern suggests that prophecy may function as a form of divine guidance, providing insight to those who demonstrate wisdom and restraint in their use of power, while withholding clarity from those who would abuse prophetic knowledge for personal gain. The cumulative effect of multiple prophecies working toward convergence creates the impression of fate actively guiding events toward predetermined conclusions. Yet the frequent failure of characters to recognize or properly interpret prophetic warnings suggests that destiny requires conscious choice and moral development, rather than passive acceptance of predicted outcomes. The prophecies serve as guides rather than guarantees, providing the knowledge necessary for heroic action while leaving the crucial decisions in mortal hands. The intersection of prophecy with political reality demonstrates how supernatural revelation can reshape earthly power structures when properly understood and acted upon. The revelations about Jon Snow's parentage, the predictions surrounding the return of dragons, and the warnings about the other's threat all converge to create conditions where ancient prophecies suddenly become urgently relevant to contemporary survival. The characters who recognize these patterns and adapt their strategies accordingly gain enormous advantages over those who dismiss prophetic wisdom as superstition. As we delve deeper into the mysteries of prophetic revelation, we discover that the true power of prophecy lies not in its ability to predict the future, but in its capacity to reveal the hidden connections that bind apparently separate events into coherent patterns of meaning. The prophecies serve as maps of destiny, showing not just where the path leads, but highlighting the crucial decision points where individual choice can alter the course of history itself. In the vast expanse of Westeros, where noble houses rise and fall like waves against rocky shores, few mysteries prove more haunting than the disappearance of those who ventured beyond the safety of their ancestral seats and never returned. These lost lords and vanished knights leave behind questions that gnaw at the edges of historical record, their fates becoming the subject of whispered speculation and desperate hope. Their stories remind us that in a world where magic lurks in forgotten corners and ancient powers stir beneath the surface of civilization, even the mightiest can simply vanish without trace or explanation. Benjen Stark, first Ranger of the Night's Watch and beloved uncle to the Stark children, represents perhaps the most personally significant of these disappearances. His ranging party ventured beyond the Wall during the early stirrings of the Other's return, seeking to investigate reports of wildling movements and strange activities in the far north. When Benjen failed to return from what should have been a routine patrol, the Night's Watch launched extensive search efforts that revealed only empty campsites and abandoned gear, as if the Rangers had simply evaporated into the wilderness. The timing of Benjen's disappearance coincides too closely with the Other's renewed activity to be dismissed as mere coincidence. His ranging party vanished just as reports began filtering south of wildling settlements found empty except for symbols arranged from corpses, of trees frozen solid in the height of summer, and of sounds beyond the Wall that belonged to no natural creature. The possibility that Benjen encountered the Others during their early preparations raises disturbing questions about what might have befallen him and his companions. Several theories attempt to explain Benjen's fate, each carrying different implications for his potential survival and transformation. The most optimistic suggests that he and his men were taken captive by the Others for unknown purposes, perhaps as sources of information about human defenses or as raw material for magical experimentation. This interpretation holds out hope for eventual rescue or escape, though it acknowledges that extended captivity by such beings would inevitably change their prisoners in fundamental ways. A more sinister possibility proposes that Benjen was killed and resurrected as a White, his body transformed into an undead servant of the Others, while his consciousness either disappeared entirely or remained trapped within his reanimated corpse. This fate would represent the ultimate corruption of a man who dedicated his life to protecting the realm against the very forces that claimed him. The irony of the First Ranger becoming an agent of the enemy he fought would reflect the cruel humor that often attends such cosmic reversals. The most intriguing theory surrounding Benjen's disappearance suggests a third possibility: transformation into something between life and death, human and other, that grants continued existence at the cost of fundamental change. The mysterious figure known as Cold Hands, who appears periodically to guide lost travelers and fight against the Others, despite his obvious undead nature, could represent this hybrid state. His retention of human speech, moral judgment, and protective instincts distinguishes him from typical Whites, while his pale skin, black hands, and lack of body warmth mark him as something no longer entirely alive. If Cold Hands truly represents Benjen Stark transformed, his existence suggests that the boundary between life and death beyond the Wall operates according to different rules than those that govern the southern kingdoms. The intervention of the Children of the Forest, who seem to command Cold Hands and direct his activities, implies that other magical forces compete with the Others for influence over those caught between existence and extinction. This possibility offers hope that disappearance beyond the wall need not mean complete loss or corruption. The pattern of disappearances extends beyond individual rangers to encompass entire expeditions and settlements that have vanished without explanation. The fate of the wildling village at Hardhome, discovered empty except for charred bones and strange symbols, reflects a systematic campaign of elimination that suggests the others operate with methodical precision rather than random violence. The careful arrangement of remains in specific patterns indicates that these disappearances serve purposes beyond simple killing. Geryon Lannister's quest for the lost Valyrian blade Brightroar represents another category of mysterious disappearance, one driven by ambition and family pride rather than duty to realm or order. The youngest brother of Tywin Lannister embarked on his journey to the ruins of Old Valyria with a small crew of adventurers determined to reclaim the ancestral sword lost during the Doom 4 centuries earlier. His expedition disappeared into the smoking sea, leaving behind only questions about what horrors claimed them in that cursed wasteland. The connection between Geryon's disappearance and Euron Greyjoy's subsequent possession of Valyrian steel armor has generated speculation about deadly encounters among the ruins of the Dragon Lord's former empire. Euron's claims of having sailed to Valyria and returned successfully make him unique among living men, as most who venture into the smoking sea never emerge from its sulphurous mists. The timing of his acquisition of priceless Valyrian artifacts coincides suspiciously with Geryon's expedition, suggesting either fortuitous scavenging or more sinister circumstances. The nature of the threats that claimed Geryon and his companions remains largely speculative, as few survive encounters with the supernatural hazards that protect Valyrian ruins. Stone men, whose touch turns living flesh to rock, patrol the waters around the sunken peninsula, while demons born from magical corruption hunt through the twisted landscape that remains above the waves. Most dangerous of all are the whispers that drive explorers mad with visions of the Empire's former glory, luring them deeper into ruins where darker powers wait to claim new victims. The disappearance of multiple Night's Watch expeditions beyond the Wall creates a pattern that suggests systematic elimination rather than random misfortune. Lord Commander Mormont's great ranging, which included 300 of the Watch's finest men, discovered the fate of several missing patrols arranged in the others' distinctive symbolic patterns. The expedition's own near-total destruction at the Fist of the First Men demonstrates that even large, well-armed forces cannot guarantee safety in the lands where ancient powers hold sway. The Rangers who vanish during routine patrols often leave behind evidence that their end came suddenly and without warning. Abandoned campsites show signs of interrupted meals and unfinished tasks, as if the occupants simply ceased to exist mid-action. The lack of struggle or flight suggests either overwhelming force or some form of supernatural influence that prevented normal defensive responses. The other's ability to approach undetected despite their alien nature implies powers that extend beyond simple stealth or camouflage. The transformation of disappeared Rangers into Whites raises questions about the preservation of consciousness during this process. Some reanimated corpses retain enough memory to attempt returning to familiar locations, suggesting that fragments of their former selves survive the transition to undeath. Others show no recognition of past relationships or loyalties, indicating that the resurrection process may affect different individuals in varying ways depending on factors not yet understood. The mysterious fate of Queen Nymeria's 10,000 ships, which carried the Rhoynar refugees to Dorne during their flight from Valyrian expansion, represents a disappearance on a massive scale that has never been adequately explained. After establishing the new kingdom in Dorne through marriage to Prince Mors Martell, Nymeria ordered her fleet burned to prevent any thought of return to their former homeland. Yet some accounts suggest that a portion of the fleet sailed west into the Sunset Sea before the burning, carrying unknown numbers of Rhoynar to whatever lands might exist beyond the known world. The fate of these vanished ships and their passengers has sparked theories about undiscovered continents and surviving Rhoynar settlements that might have preserved the water magic and river-binding techniques that once challenged Valyrian supremacy. If such communities exist across the Sunset Sea, their magical traditions could represent resources that might prove crucial in future conflicts against supernatural threats. The Rhoynar's success in resisting Valyrian conquest for centuries demonstrates that their power, while ultimately insufficient against dragonfire, possessed unique qualities that distinguished it from other magical traditions. The pattern of noble houses losing members to mysterious circumstances extends beyond individual disappearances to suggest broader forces at work that selectively remove certain individuals from their positions of power and influence. The specific targeting of those who possess knowledge, magical ability, or bloodline significance implies that these disappearances may not be random misfortune, but calculated elimination of potential threats or valuable assets by entities pursuing long-term strategic goals. The Children of the Forest's gradual disappearance from the known world represents the most systematic vanishing in recorded history, as an entire species slowly retreated from contact with human civilization. Their withdrawal to the deepest forests and most remote northern territories suggests either voluntary isolation or systematic elimination by forces that preferred their absence. The few children who remain active in current events, such as those who guide Bran Stark's development as a Green Seer, may represent the last survivors of a once numerous people. The implications of these mass disappearances for the current state of magical knowledge in Westeros prove profound, as each vanished group takes with them irreplaceable understanding of forces and techniques that could prove crucial for facing supernatural threats. The loss of Valyrian sorcery, Rhoynar water magic, and the children's nature-binding abilities has left humanity increasingly vulnerable to powers it no longer comprehends or can effectively counter. The role of memory in preserving the essence of the disappeared becomes crucial when considering whether true loss is ever permanent in a world where magic can transcend normal limitations of time and space. The Weirwood network preserves memories of the children and their human contacts, while the faces collected by the faceless men maintain some form of consciousness beyond death. These examples suggest that disappearance from the physical world need not mean complete extinction of identity or knowledge. The recurring theme of noble sacrifice underlying many disappearances hints at deeper purposes that may justify even the most tragic losses. Those who vanish often do so while pursuing goals larger than personal survival, protecting others, seeking knowledge that could save kingdoms, or fulfilling obligations that transcend individual welfare. Their disappearances may represent necessary sacrifices that enable greater victories or revelations yet to come. As we contemplate these mysteries of the vanished and the lost, we begin to understand that their absence shapes the present as powerfully as their presence once influenced the past. The gaps they leave in historical record, the knowledge they take with them, and the questions their disappearances raise, all contribute to the complex tapestry of uncertainty and possibility that defines the current age. Their stories remind us that in a world where magic and mundane reality intersect in unpredictable ways, the boundary between presence and absence, between known and unknown, remains far more fluid than mortal minds typically comprehend. Beneath the visible machinations of kings and queens, behind the public declarations of loyalty and the ceremonial displays of power, a shadow network of conspirators weaves plans that span generations and cross continental boundaries. These hidden agendas, pursued by individuals and organizations whose true allegiances remain carefully concealed, shape the fate of nations through subtle manipulation and patient calculation. The greatest players in this invisible game understand that lasting power comes not from commanding armies or sitting on thrones, but from controlling the flow of information and the loyalty of those who serve multiple masters. The faceless men of Braavos represent perhaps the most sophisticated and far-reaching conspiracy operating within the known world, their influence extending through carefully placed agents into the highest levels of government, religion, and commerce across multiple continents. Their public role as assassins for hire masks a deeper purpose that may encompass the systematic elimination of magical bloodlines, the preservation of ancient knowledge, or the gradual reshaping of civilization according to principles known only to their inner circle. The origins of the Faceless Men in the slave mines of Old Valyria provide crucial context for understanding their potential long-term objectives. Founded by those who suffered most directly under Valyrian oppression, the organization may harbor ancient grudges against Dragonlord bloodlines and the magical traditions that enabled such systematic cruelty. Their gift of death to fellow slaves expanded over centuries into a philosophy that views assassination not as murder, but as liberation from the suffering inherent in existence itself. The pricing structure employed by the Faceless Men reveals sophisticated understanding of psychological manipulation and social control. Rather than demanding simple payment in gold or goods, they require sacrifices that force clients to demonstrate the depth of their commitment to their murderous intent. The cost increases exponentially when clients seek to eliminate those closest to them, ensuring that only the most desperate or corrupted individuals will pay the price for such services. This pricing model serves multiple purposes beyond simple profit or philosophical consistency. By demanding increasingly personal sacrifices, the Faceless Men create a network of individuals who have committed themselves irrevocably to the organization's cause. Those who have paid the ultimate price for their services become permanent debtors, bound by shared guilt and mutual dependence that transcends normal loyalty relationships. The scope of Faceless Men infiltration into Westerosi society may extend far beyond what most observers suspect, with their agents potentially occupying positions of trust and influence throughout the Seven Kingdoms. The organization's ability to assume the faces and identities of the dead creates opportunities for long-term impersonation that could allow them to direct policy and manipulate events from within existing power structures. A single Faceless Man could theoretically replace multiple key figures over time, gradually steering entire kingdoms toward predetermined goals. The Iron Bank of Braavos maintains its own extensive conspiracy network, one that operates through financial leverage rather than assassination, but proves equally effective at achieving political objectives. Their philosophy that all debts must eventually be paid extends beyond simple lending to encompass a worldview that treats entire kingdoms as investments requiring careful management and occasional correction. When borrowers prove unable or unwilling to meet their obligations, the bank demonstrates remarkable creativity in finding alternative sources of repayment. The bank's involvement in Westerosi politics, through their support of various claimants to the Iron Throne, reveals a long-term strategy that transcends individual rulers or dynasties. Their decision to back Stannis Baratheon against the Lannister-controlled crown reflects calculated assessment that regime change would prove more profitable than continued negotiation with existing debtors. This willingness to finance rebellion demonstrates that the Iron Bank views political stability as less important than debt collection, regardless of the human cost of such decisions. The relationship between the Iron Bank and the Faceless Men suggests potential coordination between Braavos' most powerful institutions in pursuing shared objectives. Both organizations emerged from the Free City's founding principles of opposition to slavery and Valyrian dominance, creating natural alignment between their long-term goals. The bank's financial resources, combined with the Faceless Men's elimination capabilities, could represent a partnership capable of reshaping entire civilizations, according to their vision of proper order. The Grand Northern Conspiracy represents a very different form of hidden agenda, one rooted in traditional loyalties and honor-bound obligations rather than philosophical ideology or financial interest. This alleged network of northern houses supposedly maintains secret coordination aimed at restoring Stark rule to Winterfell and seeking vengeance against those responsible for the Red Wedding and subsequent atrocities committed against their liege lords. Evidence for the Grand Northern Conspiracy emerges from careful analysis of seemingly unrelated actions taken by various northern houses during the period following Ned Stark's execution and Robb Stark's death. The Manderleys' apparent submission to Bolton rule while secretly building strength and gathering intelligence. The Mountain Clan's continued loyalty to Stark memory despite official changes in allegiance, and the subtle resistance demonstrated by houses throughout the North suggest coordinated planning rather than spontaneous rebellion. The complexity of maintaining such a conspiracy across multiple houses, while avoiding detection by Bolton forces and their allies, demonstrates sophisticated understanding of communication and operational security. The participating houses would need to coordinate their actions while maintaining plausible cover for their activities, requiring years of careful planning and absolute trust between traditional allies. The success of such coordination, would represent one of the most impressive intelligence operations in Westerosi history. Lord Wyman Manderley emerges as a potential key figure in this conspiracy, his apparent cowardice and collaboration with the Boltons serving as perfect cover for gathering information and positioning resources for eventual action. His control over White Harbor's port facilities and his house's traditional role as the North's primary connection to southern trade networks would make him invaluable for coordinating supplies and communication with potential allies beyond the region. The role of remaining Stark loyalists throughout the North creates opportunities for a resistance network that could prove devastating to occupying forces when properly coordinated. Houses that bent the knee to the Boltons out of necessity rather than conviction might readily switch sides when presented with credible leadership and realistic chances of success. The emotional resonance of the Stark name and the atrocities committed by their enemies provide powerful motivation for sustained resistance, despite significant personal risk. Varys, the Spider, maintains perhaps the most extensive and personally controlled conspiracy network, operating across multiple kingdoms, his little birds providing information and influence in locations throughout the known world. His public role as Master of Whisperers represents only the visible tip of an intelligence apparatus that may extend far beyond official acknowledgement. The true scope of his network and the ultimate objectives it serves remain among the most closely guarded secrets in Westeros. The question of Varys's ultimate loyalty has shifted throughout the chronicles, with his allegiances apparently changing to serve what he claims to be the good of the realm rather than any individual ruler or dynasty. His support for different claimants at different times suggests either opportunistic adaptation to changing circumstances or adherence to a long-term plan that requires supporting various factions as conditions warrant. The consistency with which he positions himself to survive regime changes implies extraordinary foresight or access to information unavailable to others. The relationship between Varys and Illyrio Mopatis, the Magister of Pentos whose wealth and connections enabled Daenerys Targaryen's rise to power, reveals coordination between conspirators operating across vast distances and different political systems. Their shared investment in restoring Targaryen rule to Westeros transcends simple business partnership to suggest ideological commitment or personal stake in the outcome that neither has fully revealed. The timing of various conspiracies' activation suggests coordination or response to specific triggering events that signal optimal conditions for implementation. The near-simultaneous emergence of multiple threats to existing power structures implies either remarkable coincidence or carefully orchestrated planning that has been years or decades in development. The convergence of these hidden agendas during periods of maximum instability suggests that successful conspirators understand how to exploit chaos rather than simply react to it. The infiltration of religious institutions by secular conspirators adds another layer of complexity to the hidden power struggles operating throughout the realm. The High Sparrow's movement within the Faith of the Seven demonstrates how spiritual authority can be weaponized for political purposes, while foreign priests like Melisandre show how religious influence can serve geopolitical objectives that transcend theological concerns. The intersection of faith and conspiracy creates opportunities for manipulation that exploit believers' trust while advancing hidden agendas. The ultimate success or failure of these various conspiracies may depend less on their individual merits than on their ability to adapt to rapidly changing circumstances and unexpected developments. The return of magic to the world, the emergence of supernatural threats, and the breakdown of traditional political structures create conditions where even the most carefully laid plans may prove inadequate. The conspirators who survive and prosper will likely be those who demonstrate flexibility and willingness to abandon long-cherished objectives when new realities demand different approaches. The revelation of these hidden agendas and their true scope serves to remind us that visible power often represents only the surface layer of much deeper and more complex systems of control and influence. The kings and queens who appear to rule kingdoms may themselves be pawns in games whose rules and objectives they do not fully understand. The true shapers of destiny may be those who work from shadows, patient and invisible as they guide events toward conclusions that serve purposes known only to themselves and their most trusted confederates. The irregular nature of seasonal change in Westeros creates social and political consequences that extend far beyond agricultural planning or military campaigning. The uncertainty inherent in unpredictable seasons prevents the development of stable institutions and long-term social structures, as communities must remain constantly prepared for dramatic environmental changes that could destroy years of careful preparation. This instability may serve the interests of magical forces that prefer humanity to remain adaptable and dependent, rather than achieving the kind of technological mastery that characterized old Valyria. The role of prophecy in predicting seasonal changes suggests that some individuals possess sensitivity to the cosmic forces that control climatic patterns. The woods, witches, and wise women who claim to sense the approach of winter often prove more accurate than the maester's careful observations, implying access to information sources that transcend normal sensory perception. Their predictions may reflect attunement to magical currents that fluctuate in advance of physical manifestations, providing early warning to those who understand their significance. The economic implications of irregular seasons create opportunities for those clever enough to anticipate and prepare for dramatic climatic shifts. Houses that stockpile grain before unexpected winter onsets or invest in shipping during extended summers can accumulate wealth and influence that transcends their traditional status. This economic volatility may serve as another mechanism through which cosmic forces shape human society, rewarding adaptability while punishing rigid adherence to predictable patterns. The psychological impact of living under seasonal uncertainty affects entire populations, creating cultural attitudes that emphasize fatalism, adaptability, and suspicion of long-term planning. The stark words, "Winter is coming," reflect not just awareness of climatic reality, but acceptance of cosmic forces beyond human control that periodically disrupt civilization's comfortable assumptions. This psychological adaptation may represent humanity's unconscious recognition of their subordinate position in a world where greater powers determine the fundamental conditions of existence. The connection between seasonal changes and magical phenomena extends beyond simple correlation to suggest that climatic variation may actually regulate the availability and intensity of supernatural forces throughout the world. Extended summers could represent periods when magical energy accumulates like water behind a dam, building pressure that eventually releases in the form of enhanced winter magic and increased supernatural activity. The others return during these transitions might reflect their role as agents of magical redistribution rather than simple harbingers of destruction. The influence of cosmic forces on individual psychology and behavior becomes apparent through careful observation of how characters respond to seasonal extremes. Extended summers breed complacency and moral decay, as abundance removes the necessity for cooperation and mutual support, while harsh winters force communities to choose between solidarity and survival. These psychological shifts suggest that seasonal variation serves as more than environmental challenge, functioning as a form of cosmic education that teaches recurring lessons about human nature and social organization. The possibility that Westeros's irregular seasons reflect artificial manipulation rather than natural variation raises disturbing questions about the intentions and capabilities of whatever forces control these patterns. If the chaotic climate represents deliberate policy rather than cosmic accident, the beings or powers responsible demonstrate unprecedented authority over fundamental planetary systems. Such control implies planning that spans geological timescales and objectives that encompass the entire development of human civilization. The ancient texts preserved in the Citadel contain references to periods when seasons followed more predictable patterns, suggesting that the current irregular system may be relatively recent in geological terms. These historical accounts describe times when spring, summer, autumn, and winter each lasted roughly equal periods measured in months rather than years, creating stable agricultural cycles that supported larger populations and more sophisticated civilizations than currently exist. The transition from regular to irregular seasons appears to coincide with several pivotal events in magical history: the forging of the first sword of Valyrian steel, the binding of the first dragon to human will, and the creation of the wall that separates the far north from the rest of Westeros. These correlations suggest that humanity's increasing mastery over magical forces may have disrupted natural systems that previously maintained climatic stability. The role of the wall itself in influencing seasonal patterns deserves particular consideration, as this massive barrier incorporates magical elements that could affect atmospheric conditions across the entire continent. Built with spells woven by the children of the forest and reinforced by centuries of Night's Watch presence, the wall may function as more than simple fortification against supernatural threats. Its magical properties could actively regulate the flow of thermal energy between north and south, creating artificial seasonal boundaries that override natural climatic patterns. The Maester's attempts to develop scientific explanations for seasonal irregularity may reflect a fundamental misunderstanding of the forces at work, as their instruments and methods assume purely physical causation rather than magical intervention. Their focus on astronomical observation and meteorological measurement blinds them to the possibility that consciousness and will, rather than mechanical forces, determine when winter yields to summer and when abundance gives way to scarcity. The long-term implications of irregular seasonal control suggest that whatever forces govern these patterns may be working toward objectives that encompass the entire future development of human civilization. The constant uncertainty and periodic devastation prevent humanity from achieving the kind of stable technological advancement that might eventually threaten magical dominance. Each harsh winter eliminates accumulated knowledge and forces societies to focus on immediate survival rather than long-term progress. The beauty and terror of Westeros's unpredictable seasons ultimately reflect the broader theme of humanity's relationship with forces beyond their comprehension or control. The irregular climate serves as a constant reminder that despite their achievements in warfare, politics, and culture, humans remain subject to powers that operate according to principles they can neither understand nor influence. The seasons become a metaphor for fate itself, arriving without warning and departing according to schedules known only to the cosmic forces that shape reality according to their own inscrutable purposes. In most of the known world, seasons follow predictable patterns that allow civilizations to plan harvests, prepare for winter's hardships, and organize their societies around reliable natural cycles. Yet in Westeros, the very foundation of agricultural and social planning rests upon uncertainty, as summers and winters stretch for years or even decades in defiance of any astronomical explanation. These irregular seasons represent more than mere climatic anomaly. They suggest the operation of forces so fundamental to the world's nature that they reshape the basic relationship between civilization and the natural order. The Maesters of the Citadel, those learned men who dedicate their lives to understanding the natural world through observation and study, have recorded detailed accounts of seasonal variations spanning thousands of years. Their chronicles document summers that lasted a decade and winters that stretched for entire generations, creating famines that claimed millions and abundance that led to unprecedented population growth. Yet despite centuries of careful observation, their instruments detect no astronomical causes for these variations. No orbital irregularities or solar fluctuations that could explain such dramatic departures from natural law. The absence of scientific explanation for Westeros's chaotic seasons has led many to propose that magical forces actively control climatic patterns, treating weather and temperature as tools to be wielded rather than natural phenomena to be endured. This theory gains credence from the observed correlation between periods of intense magical activity and the most extreme seasonal variations. The longest winters in recorded history coincided with the others' previous appearances, while the most prosperous summers occurred during eras when dragon magic flourished under Targaryen rule. The connection between the others and winter's onset appears to transcend simple correlation, suggesting a causal relationship that operates on levels deeper than mere association. The creatures of ice and darkness do not simply emerge during cold periods. Their very presence seems to strengthen winter's grip on the world, extending its duration and intensifying its effects far beyond what natural causes could produce. Areas touched by their passage experience supernatural cold that persists long after their departure, as if their essence becomes embedded in the landscape itself. The mechanism through which the others influence seasonal patterns remains largely theoretical, though their demonstrated power over temperature and weather suggests access to fundamental forces that govern atmospheric conditions. Their ability to summon blizzards from clear skies and freeze rivers that should remain liquid implies control over thermal energy at a molecular level, treating heat and cold as substances to be manipulated rather than simple states of matter. The opposing force that brings summer's return may operate through similar principles, channeling warmth and life energy to counteract the other's influence and restore natural growth cycles. The dragons of House Targaryen, creatures whose very breath embodies the essence of fire, and whose presence radiates heat that can be felt from great distances, could represent the physical manifestation of these summer-bringing forces. Their return to the world after more than a century of absence coincides with the end of the longest summer in recorded memory, suggesting a connection between dragon magic and seasonal transition. The role of human consciousness in influencing seasonal patterns presents one of the most intriguing possibilities for understanding how cosmic forces respond to mortal actions and beliefs. The collective psychological state of populations during extended summers or winters may feed back into the magical systems that govern climate, creating reinforcement loops that extend favorable conditions when societies flourish or hasten harsh transitions when civilizations decay. This interpretation suggests that the seasons reflect not just physical conditions, but spiritual and moral states that influence cosmic balance. The ancient texts preserved in various repositories across Westeros contain references to rituals and ceremonies designed to influence seasonal transitions, practices that supposedly allowed early civilizations to negotiate with cosmic forces for favorable weather. The children of the forest may have possessed techniques for encouraging spring's arrival or moderating winter's severity, using their connection to the natural world to maintain climatic conditions that supported both human and forest communities. The loss of this seasonal magic following the children's retreat from human contact could explain why modern Westeros experiences such extreme and unpredictable climate variations. Without the mediating influence of those who understood the relationship between consciousness and cosmic forces, the natural systems that govern weather may have become unstable, swinging between extremes as competing magical influences battle for dominance without skilled guidance to maintain balance. The wall itself may serve multiple functions in regulating seasonal patterns, its magical properties creating a barrier not just against supernatural threats, but against the climatic chaos that the other's presence would otherwise spread throughout the continent. The structure's massive scale and the power required to maintain it suggest that its builders understood the connection between magical containment and environmental stability. By consenting the other's influence in the far north, the wall may prevent their winter magic from completely overwhelming the southern kingdoms. The symbolic relationship between seasons and human development reflects deeper truths about the cyclical nature of civilization itself. Societies that grow soft during extended summers become vulnerable to the harsh realities that winter imposes, while communities that survive prolonged cold emerge stronger and more resilient than before. These patterns suggest that cosmic forces may actively test human adaptability, using seasonal extremes to prevent civilizations from becoming so comfortable that they lose the flexibility necessary for survival in a dangerous world. The connection between seasonal changes and the availability of magical power creates opportunities for those who understand these relationships to time their actions for maximum effectiveness. Practitioners of different magical traditions may find their abilities enhanced during specific climatic conditions, with fire magic reaching peak potency during summer, while ice magic gains strength as winter deepens. The coordination of major supernatural events with seasonal transitions implies that cosmic forces operate according to schedules that transcend mortal understanding. The Iron Throne's symbolic relationship to seasonal control adds political dimensions to climatic management that most rulers never consciously acknowledge. Kings and queens who reign during prosperous summers receive credit for abundance they did not create, while those who rule during harsh winters face blame for hardships beyond their control. This dynamic suggests that cosmic forces may deliberately test political systems by varying the environmental conditions under which they must operate. The long-term patterns embedded within Westeros's seasonal chaos reveal mathematical relationships that hint at underlying order within apparent randomness. Careful analysis of historical records suggests that while individual seasons remain unpredictable, longer cycles spanning centuries follow more regular patterns. These metacycles imply that cosmic forces operate on multiple temporal scales simultaneously, creating short-term chaos that serves longer-term stability. The possibility that Westeros's irregular seasons represent preparation for specific future events adds urgency to understanding their underlying causes and patterns. If cosmic forces actively shape climate to create optimal conditions for prophesied occurrences, the current extended summer may be building toward a winter of unprecedented severity, designed to facilitate the final confrontation between ice and fire. The accumulation of thermal energy during warm periods could fuel the supernatural cold necessary for the other's ultimate campaign. The role of sacrifice in influencing seasonal transitions appears throughout historical accounts and religious traditions, suggesting that cosmic forces respond to demonstrations of commitment and loss from mortal participants. Kings who offer their lives to bring spring's return, communities that sacrifice precious resources to hasten winter's end, and individuals who surrender personal desires for collective survival, all participate in negotiations with powers that value sacrifice above material offerings. The relationship between individual consciousness and cosmic forces becomes apparent through characters whose personal journeys mirror seasonal changes in their environments. Those who embrace winter's lessons of hardship and sacrifice often find themselves aligned with cosmic currents that support their objectives, while characters who resist seasonal realities discover that their environments actively oppose their goals. This alignment suggests that cosmic forces respond to moral and spiritual development, rather than operating according to purely mechanical principles. The ultimate resolution of Westeros's seasonal chaos may require humanity to develop new relationships with the cosmic forces that govern climate, moving beyond simple endurance toward active partnership in maintaining environmental balance. This development would represent evolution in human consciousness, recognition that civilization's survival depends not on conquering nature, but on understanding and cooperating with the greater powers that shape planetary systems. As we explore the mysteries of identity and transformation in this magical world, we discover that the question of who we truly are extends far beyond simple birth circumstances or family heritage. The fluidity of consciousness, the malleability of physical form, and the possibility of transcending individual limitations through magical means all contribute to a complex understanding of selfhood that challenges every assumption about personal continuity and individual responsibility. In a realm where faces can be stolen, souls can be displaced, and death itself proves temporary, the nature of identity becomes not a fixed fact, but an ongoing choice that each conscious being must make repeatedly throughout their existence. As the wheel of time turns and the great game approaches its climactic moves, the myriad threads of mystery and theory that have shaped our understanding begin to weave together into patterns whose significance transcends individual revelation. The ancient symbols carved by forgotten civilizations, the bloodlines that carry magic through generations, the prophecies that speak of heroes yet to come, and the cosmic forces that govern seasons and supernatural threats, all converge toward a singular truth: that the history of Westeros moves not in straight lines but in great circles, each age echoing those that came before, while building toward transformations that will define those yet to come. The cyclical nature of conflict between ice and fire emerges as the fundamental pattern underlying all other mysteries and theories that have captured scholarly attention throughout the ages. The long night that brought the others south 8,000 years ago represents not an isolated catastrophe, but the most recent manifestation of a struggle that predates human civilization and will continue long after current kingdoms fade into legend. The heroes who arose to face that ancient darkness achieved victory not through permanent defeat of their enemies, but through temporary restoration of balance that allowed life and warmth to flourish until the next inevitable turning of the cosmic wheel. The correlation between the other's return and the birth of dragons after more than a century of absence suggests that these opposing forces remain bound by relationships that transcend simple antagonism. Neither ice nor fire can exist in isolation. Each requires the other to define its nature and purpose within the greater system that governs magical reality. The dragon's awakening may have triggered the other's emergence just as surely as ancient prophecies predicted, creating the conditions necessary for the final confrontation between elemental forces that has been building for generations. The bloodline mysteries that connect characters across great houses and ancient prophecies reveal themselves as more than genealogical curiosities when viewed within this broader pattern of cosmic convergence. The hidden Targaryen heritage that flows through multiple individuals creates the three heads of the dragon necessary for restoring balance to magical forces that have remained dormant since Valyria's fall. Each candidate for dragon blood represents not just potential power, but specific qualities required for facing the multifaceted nature of the coming darkness. Jon Snow's parentage connects him to both ice and fire through bloodlines that embody the eternal struggle between opposing forces, positioning him to serve as mediator or bridge between powers that have been locked in conflict since the world's creation. His resurrection from death grants him perspective on the boundary between existence and extinction that few living beings possess, while his experience uniting traditional enemies demonstrates the leadership necessary for forging alliances that transcend historical grievances. Tyrion Lannister's potential Targaryen heritage would complete the trinity of dragon blood, while adding his unique understanding of political manipulation and human psychology to the magical equation. His ability to inspire loyalty in unlikely allies and his talent for finding unexpected solutions to seemingly impossible problems could prove crucial for scenarios that require both supernatural power and practical wisdom. His physical limitations and social rejection have forced him to develop intellectual capabilities that complement rather than compete with the more traditional heroic qualities of his potential dragon-riding companions. The geographic convergence of ancient powers at specific locations throughout Westeros reflects the systematic nature of the approaching climax, as characters find themselves drawn to places where past, present, and future intersect with unusual intensity. Winterfell. Built over natural hot springs that suggest geological activity, and positioned at the junction of major travel routes that connect all regions of the north, serves as more than simply a castle or seat of government. The crypts beneath its foundations house generations of Stark dead, whose stone likenesses watch over secrets that may prove vital for understanding the true nature of the coming conflict. The Isle of Faces in the heart of the Riverlands, where the children of the forest and the first men signed their ancient pact, remains active with powers that predate human civilization and continue to influence contemporary events through the weirwood network that connects sacred groves across the continent. The location serves as a neutral ground, where representatives of different magical traditions might gather to negotiate solutions that transcend the limitations of individual perspectives or factional interests. Dragonstone. The ancient Targaryen stronghold, built upon volcanic foundations that echo the 14 flames of lost Valyria, represents the focal point where dragon magic intersects with the political reality of Westerosi governance. The castle's architecture incorporates design elements that channel and concentrate magical forces, creating an environment where dragon blood achieves maximum potency and prophetic visions gain unusual clarity. The obsidian deposits that ring the island provide ready access to one of the few substances capable of harming the others, suggesting that the location was chosen or shaped specifically for the coming confrontation. The wall itself, that massive barrier of ice and magic that separates the known world from the supernatural wilderness beyond, may represent the ultimate convergence point, where all threads of mystery and prophecy must eventually lead. Built through cooperation between human engineering and the children's magic, reinforced by centuries of Night's Watch dedication, and positioned to channel cosmic forces that govern the balance between ice and fire. The wall embodies humanity's greatest achievement in magical architecture. The ancient Horn of Winter, said to possess the power to bring down the wall, represents a crucial element in theories about how the final convergence will unfold. If such an artifact truly exists and carries the destructive capability attributed to it, its use would not simply remove a physical barrier, but fundamentally alter the magical equilibrium that has defined Westerosi civilization for thousands of years. The release of forces currently contained beyond the wall could trigger changes that reshape the entire continent's relationship with supernatural power. The role of sacrifice in achieving cosmic balance becomes apparent through careful analysis of how previous confrontations between ice and fire reached resolution. The legends of Azor Ahai speak of personal sacrifice as the price for forging weapons capable of defeating darkness, while the histories of the Long Night describe entire civilizations offering their greatest treasures to secure salvation from eternal winter. The pattern suggests that cosmic forces require demonstration of commitment that transcends individual welfare before they will respond with the power necessary for victory. The convergence of multiple prophecies toward simultaneous fulfillment creates unprecedented conditions where ancient predictions that seemed unrelated suddenly reveal their interconnected nature. The prince that was promised, the three heads of the dragon, the return of Azor Ahai, and the coming of the next long night all point toward the same temporal nexus where individual destinies merge with cosmic necessity. This convergence suggests that the approaching climax represents not just another turning of the wheel, but a fundamental transformation in the relationship between mortal will and divine purpose. The preservation of knowledge through the various institutions and traditions that have maintained ancient wisdom becomes crucial as the convergence approaches. The Maester's libraries, the faceless men's collected faces, the children's weirwood memories, and the Red Priest's prophetic flames all contribute fragments of understanding that must be assembled into coherent wisdom before the final confrontation. No single source contains complete knowledge. The truth emerges only through synthesis of multiple perspectives and traditions. As we approach the culmination of these converging mysteries, we begin to understand that the greatest transformation may not involve the defeat of external enemies, but the evolution of human consciousness itself. The trials and revelations that have shaped individual characters throughout their journeys serve as preparation for a collective awakening that could fundamentally alter humanity's relationship with the magical forces that govern our world. The choice between ice and fire may ultimately prove less important than the decision to transcend the limitations that have kept mortals separate from the cosmic powers that shape their destiny. In a world where magic can reshape flesh as easily as clay, and death proves no barrier to continued existence, the very nature of identity becomes a fluid and contested concept. The boundaries that separate one consciousness from another, one body from the next, prove far more permeable than mortal minds typically comprehend. Through ancient arts and forbidden techniques, individuals can transcend the limitations of their birth, assuming new forms and identities that challenge fundamental assumptions about what it means to be human. The faceless men of Braavos represent the most systematic exploration of identity transformation. Their sacred techniques allowing practitioners to literally wear the faces and assume the identities of the dead. This process transcends simple disguise or impersonation to encompass complete physical and psychological metamorphosis, enabling perfect mimicry that fools even intimate family members and closest friends. The magic required for such transformation demands the complete suppression of personal identity, forcing practitioners to become no one before they can become someone else. The question of whether the faceless man retains any trace of their original consciousness during impersonation reveals the disturbing implications of their art. If the transformation is complete, allowing perfect access to the stolen identity's memories, mannerisms, and emotional responses, then the boundaries between individuals become meaningless. The person wearing the face may truly become the deceased for the duration of the impersonation, raising questions about which consciousness is real and which is merely borrowed. This uncertainty about the nature of identity transformation creates the possibility that skilled, faceless men could replace key figures in Westerosi society without detection, gradually altering the course of political and social development through subtle manipulation. A single agent could theoretically eliminate and replace multiple targets over time, accumulating influence and knowledge while serving agenda known only to their hidden masters. The scope of such infiltration could extend to the highest levels of government and religious authority. The theory that Arya Stark herself may have been replaced by a faceless man during her training in Braavos represents one of the most disturbing possibilities emerging from careful analysis of identity transformation magic. Her rapid development of skills that should require years to master, her emotional detachment from family connections that once defined her character, and her methodical approach to eliminating targets from her personal list all suggest fundamental changes in personality that could indicate replacement rather than growth. The evidence supporting the false Arya theory focuses on subtle shifts in behavior and capability that become apparent after her return to Westeros. The fierce, impulsive child who fled King's Landing possessed strong emotional reactions and deep family loyalty that drove her survival through multiple dangerous situations. The calm, calculating young woman who returned demonstrates professional competence and emotional control that seem inconsistent with natural character development under traumatic circumstances. The technical aspects of Arya's combat abilities provide additional grounds for suspicion among those who study the theory of her replacement. Her acrobatic fighting style and supernatural agility exceed what intensive training alone could reasonably produce, suggesting either magical enhancement or the presence of a different individual entirely. The faceless men's access to faces and identities from across the known world could have provided them with a suitable replacement whose natural abilities would explain Arya's enhanced capabilities. Yet, the counter-evidence for Arya's authenticity includes her retention of specific memories and emotional responses that would be difficult for an imposter to replicate perfectly. Her recognition of family members and her knowledge of private conversations and shared experiences suggest continuity of consciousness that argues against replacement theory. The gradual nature of her transformation, visible through careful observation of her journey, supports the interpretation that she represents genuine character development rather than substitution. The broader implications of identity transformation extend beyond individual cases to encompass questions about the nature of consciousness itself, in a world where magic can reshape fundamental aspects of existence. If identity can be transferred, copied, or artificially maintained beyond death, the traditional understanding of personal responsibility and moral accountability becomes problematic. The person who commits actions while wearing a stolen face bears unclear relationship to both the original personality and the deceased individual whose identity enabled the deed. The resurrection magic practiced by servants of the Lord of Light creates another form of identity transformation that challenges conventional understanding of death and consciousness. Those brought back from death retain their memories and personalities but demonstrate subtle changes that suggest the process affects more than simple physical restoration. Beric Dondarrion's gradual loss of memories through multiple resurrections implies that consciousness itself becomes damaged or depleted through repeated transitions between life and death. The question of whether resurrected individuals represent the same people who died or new beings that share their memories reflects deeper philosophical problems about the relationship between consciousness and physical form. If the soul or essential self can exist independently of the body, resurrection might indeed restore complete identity. If consciousness depends entirely on physical brain structure, the resurrected person could be a copy with shared memories but distinct identity from the original. Jon Snow's resurrection presents a unique case study in identity preservation through magical intervention, as his return appears to maintain psychological continuity while potentially altering fundamental aspects of his nature. His ability to survive injuries that should prove fatal, his enhanced resistance to cold, and his changed relationship with Ghost suggest that the resurrection process imbued him with qualities that transcend normal human limitations while preserving the essential elements of his personality. The warging abilities possessed by several characters, particularly members of House Stark, represent another form of identity transformation that allows consciousness to inhabit different physical forms temporarily. The process of controlling animals through mental projection requires the temporary suppression of human identity while maintaining enough self-awareness to direct the host creature's actions. Extended warging sessions risk permanent displacement of consciousness, creating the possibility of becoming trapped in animal form. The second life experienced by wargs whose human bodies die while their consciousness remains projected into animal companions demonstrates that identity can survive physical death under specific magical conditions. These displaced souls retain their human memories and personalities while adapting to very different physical capabilities and sensory experiences. The long-term psychological effects of such transformation remain largely unknown, though historical accounts suggest that most eventually lose human perspective entirely. The skin changers who progress beyond simple animal control to influence human minds represent the most disturbing application of identity transformation magic, as they demonstrate the ability to override another person's consciousness temporarily or permanently. This power raises fundamental questions about free will and personal autonomy in a world where magical practitioners can literally control the thoughts and actions of others. The existence of such abilities implies that any individual's behavior might potentially be influenced by outside forces operating through supernatural means. The collective consciousness represented by the Weirwood Network and the Three-Eyed Ravens suggests that identity itself may be less fixed and individual than mortal experience typically suggests. The ability to access memories and perspectives from thousands of years of history implies that consciousness can transcend individual lifespans and physical limitations when properly connected to larger systems of awareness. This possibility reframes identity as a temporary focus of attention within a vast, interconnected field of consciousness, rather than a discrete and separate entity. The transformation of personality and identity through traumatic experiences represents a more mundane but equally significant form of change that affects numerous characters throughout the chronicles. Individuals who survive extreme situations often emerge fundamentally altered, their core beliefs and emotional responses reshaped by encounters with death, betrayal, or loss. These psychological transformations can be so complete that friends and family struggle to recognize the person who returns, suggesting that identity itself remains malleable throughout life. The role of names and titles in maintaining or altering identity becomes apparent through characters who adopt new designations that reflect their transformed nature. The transition from Arya Stark to No One represents deliberate identity erasure, while titles like the Hound or the Mountain reduce complex individuals to single defining characteristics. These naming practices suggest cultural recognition that identity can be consciously reshaped through ritualistic abandonment of previous self-concepts. As we explore the mysteries of identity and transformation in this magical world, we discover that the question of who we truly are extends far beyond simple birth circumstances or family heritage. The fluidity of consciousness, the malleability of physical form, and the possibility of transcending individual limitations through magical means all contribute to a complex understanding of selfhood that challenges every assumption about personal continuity and individual responsibility. In a realm where faces can be stolen, souls can be displaced, and death itself proves temporary, the nature of identity becomes not a fixed fact, but an ongoing choice that each conscious being must make repeatedly throughout their existence. These theories, born from careful observation and passionate speculation, remind us that the greatest stories are those that continue long after their telling. In Westeros, as in our own world, truth often hides beneath layers of legend and interpretation, waiting for patient minds to unravel its secrets through dedication and wisdom. Whether these mysteries find resolution in future books or remain forever shrouded in ambiguity, they serve a deeper purpose. They invite us to look beyond surface narratives and discover the profound themes that resonate through time. The questions that emerged from Martin's world reflect our own eternal struggles with power, identity, mortality, and the search for meaning in an uncertain universe. The hidden parentages that reshape destiny, the ancient forces that govern seasons and magic, the conspiracies that operate across generations, and the transformations that challenge our understanding of consciousness all speak to fundamental mysteries that define human existence itself. As you drift toward sleep, let these mysteries remind you that some truths are worth the wait, and that the journey toward understanding often proves more valuable than the destination itself. In the realm of ice and fire, as in the world of dreams, the boundaries between what is real and what is possible remain beautifully, eternally fluid.